On this edition of the Inside Syracuse Basketball podcast, I'm joined by my syracuse.com colleagues Brent and Donna Ditota. We discuss Judah Mintz's decision to return to Syracuse for his sophomore year, his impact on next year's Orange, the lineup possibilities that new coach Adrian Autry will have at his disposal, and where we think Syracuse will finish at the end of the 2024 season. Welcome back to another edition of the Inside Syracuse Basketball podcast. I'm Mike Waters, and today we've got the whole gang back together, folks. As John Belushi said in the Blues Brothers, right, Brent? I saw that tweet last night.
We're getting the band
back together. Yeah.
Once again, Mike with a rando movie reference. Thank you.
Not just me, it was Brent. Brent had the awesome.
I started this one. Yeah.
All right. I got a cold, just FYI, everybody. It's going to be hard to enunciate as well, but here we go.
Donna's she's gonna fight through today. But we're here because Judah's back. The news came out on Wednesday night. News that Syracuse fans have been waiting 2 months for, and Judah made them wait almost up until the final minutes before the deadline to withdraw. What was that, Donna?
I think it was 9:05.
Yeah. My wife and my daughter and I were all watching the last Ted Lasso, and the girls were getting annoyed because I had my phone in my hand, waiting for Judah updates. So Judah gives Syracuse fans the news they had been hoping for, announcing that he's going to return to Syracuse for his sophomore year after going through the NBA draft process, including the combine. And I guess, Brent and Donna, the first thing I want to ask is, were you surprised by Judah's decision? Did you think he was going to stay in the draft, or did you think he was going to come back?
You know, I honestly thought that he was coming back all the way. And the later the day went, the more I was starting to question myself. By the way, you know that little report you get on Sundays that your iPhone sends you, your screen time report? I think mine this week, given all the time I spent on my phone yesterday, is just going to be like, dude, get off the phone. But anyway, that's a whole different topic for a different day. I honestly thought he was coming back all the way because of conversations I had with a scout, because of the feedback that I got and saw out there. I just didn't think he was in a good position to get drafted. Now, Donna and I were kind of talking about this in our work thread yesterday. Like, I'm not good at deciphering social media code these days, but Judah had like an Instagram story that was a song and song lyrics. And it was kind of like, believe it in yourself. And I was like, I don't know, that kind of feels like he's going to bet on himself and go to the NBA. But I don't know. I just kind of had this feeling all along that we were going to see what we saw last night. And it was just kind of building the drama. I don't know why you waited till 9 o'clock at night. I mean, prime time, maybe. I don't know. We'll have to talk to Judah about that. But I did think he was coming back. Donna, I think you had the opposite opinion, right?
I did, because I think Judah is a guy who bets on himself. He's extremely confident, which is one of the things I really love about him. And I think it's very, very hard for guys when they're in that position and they're surrounded by NBA people, they're in NBA settings, to see something that you want so badly right there, and then to pull back and say, you know what? I think I'm going to wait a year, or I think I'm maybe not quite ready, or I think I'm maybe not quite good enough. I could not imagine Judah saying that. I think he is one of the fiercest competitors that Syracuse has had. He reminds me a little bit of Tyus in that both really, really tough, fierce guys who are desperate to win or desperate to play well. And I just think it would have been really hard for him, and I'm sure it was very hard for him, to step away from something he's wanted his entire life and say, you know what, I'm coming back to school for another year.
Yeah, I can see. I was going in the weeks leading up to it. I was going back and forth. I think he's going to stay in the draft. Maybe not. You know, it's like, so yeah, I spent even yesterday waffling back and forth. And of course, we all had two versions of stories written. You know, whether it was actually two different stories or we had a couple paragraphs, then we were going to take one out. So, all right. So second question for you guys. So he comes back, he announces he's coming back. What's the immediate impact on this Syracuse team, the Syracuse roster?
Well, I think clearly they know who their point guard is going to be. That's the position that's settled at this point. I mean, I think without Judah, it would have been who would the point guard be? And I think it would have been sort of a point guard by committee. I think they would have had a number of guys who may have played a little bit of lead guard, or I think I don't know exactly the designations that they're going to have this year. I mean, I think Judah clearly at this point is a point guard, but I think they're going to play a different way this year. I think they're going to have more wings and more guards on the floor at the same time. And I think, putting a bunch of facilitators on the court at the same time is really interesting. It's kind of the trend of where basketball is going these days. And, I wrote a piece today that, the two best teams in the ACC last year played a lot of forwards and a lot of guards and not a big guy. And so I think at point guard, I think, would Quadier have been their point guard? Would JJ Starling have been their point guard? It's hard to know. We haven't gotten into any of the really, really nitty gritty of how those guys have practiced or how they've meshed as a team. So it's hard to really project. But now clearly that position is settled. They got a point guard.
I think the most important thing is now this team has a center, not literally the position, like a center, a rock, a sure thing. Because when you go around the roster, everything else, there's a lot of talent, there's a lot of potential, but there's also a lot of questions. Like look at the guard position. You got 3 talented players that have come in as transfers, but they were all hurt last year in some capacity, and we're all kind of wondering what the recovery is and what the acclimation process is and how they would work. I think that's asking a lot of that position for someone to come in and lead right off the bat, which I think JJ Starling naturally would do. But Judah, as Donna was talking about, just walks right in, and you know who the guard is. The center position itself is a question mark, and I think they did some good things there, but we have to see how that plays out. Your other 2 returning starters, in Chris Bell and Benny Williams, obviously we've seen moments, we've seen flashes from both of those guys, but they have to make a lot of progress and take steps forward this year. Judah just brings calm. He brings confidence. Like, I know what I'm getting from that guy. And that's what this team needed. I mean, this is a program in transition right now. And I think people are excited about some of the possibilities about, and we'll kind of talk about it, what kind of lineups we could see and what Adrian Autry is doing with his program, but they needed some stability, and bringing Judah back is like, oh, okay. Like, as a Syracuse fan, I know what I'm getting if I'm thinking it from that standpoint, and that's got to make you feel good.
He's now the 3rd starter that'll come back from last year's team, but the other 2 guys were Chris Bell and Benny Williams. They had seasons that were more typical of a freshman and a young player. Benny was a sophomore who barely played as a freshman. They had typical type seasons. Judah had a remarkable freshman season. So he gives them now somebody who's not only got a year as a starter, but also a year of success, consistent success under his belt. And I think it's really going to help Syracuse with that early schedule. Yeah. Going to Maui, playing Oregon on a neutral court, probably it got a road game against Georgetown. And then you have that SEC opponent. Those are tough games. I can't imagine that team, going into that early season schedule, with a backcourt of, 2 guys that didn't play much as freshmen and both had injuries last year, and Chance Westry and JJ Starling. So I think Judah's return is just a big boost for Syracuse. You're talking about lineups and rotations. I kind of want to go a different angle than that right now. 3-point shooting. Obviously, they lose Joe Girard. And even with Judah back and the other guys they've added, what's this team, where are the 3-point threats? And how is this team going to create space for guys like Judah, JJ, who like to drive to the basket or play in that mid-range area?
Well, I mean, the guys that they have coming back, the 3 guys that they have coming back that shot the ball well last year were Benny, who improved his 3-point shooting immensely. He shot almost 40% from 3 last year. Justin Taylor, who shot almost 40% from 3 last year, and Chris Bell, who shot around 35%. All those guys shot the ball really well last year from the 3-point line. The problem was they didn't get a lot of opportunity to shoot the ball. The ball was mostly in the hands of Joe and mostly in the hands of Judah last year. And the entry passes mostly went to Jesse. I mean, those were their 3 best players last year. So naturally, I suppose that would happen. But I think those other 3 guys were a little bit underutilized. And I think those 3 guys have to shoot the ball as well or better this season. And then you have to hope that JJ and Chance shoot the ball better than they shot it last year. Now, obviously, they both had seasons of injury, and Notre Dame had a terrible year last year. So I think judging what they did last year about a season that was not, all that great for either of those two guys for various reasons, is not what we should do. But they shot the three ball well last year. They just didn't take many threes. And I think, college basketball being as it is, basketball being as it is, they need those two guys who are coming in, those two guards who are coming in to shoot it better. And they need the three guys that they had shoot it well, continue to shoot it well.
I think Chris Bell's the key there because, I mean, how many times did we hear talk about, you guys wrote about that they loved Chris Bell in practice shooting the ball, right? Like this guy could light it up at times. And it felt like that Jim Boeheim last year, like kind of gave him the green light to shoot and he would get open and he'd have these shots and he'd be like, okay, what kind of day are we going to have here? So if he can match some of those stories we've heard, right, of what he can do there, I think that adds to it because I know Justin Taylor can shoot threes. I just think with another year, off-season workouts, going into a season, like I know he can do it. And then obviously Judah, look, we saw a couple games at the end of last year. We're like, oh, what do we got here? Judah Mintz hitting the 4 or 5 3-pointers in a game. We started to see that natural build. And I think that's ultimately, and Mike, I wonder if you agree, but I think that's ultimately why he's not going to get drafted, why he's not in the draft. I mean, you need that 3-point shot in the game these days. And if there's any weakness, especially at the guard position, like it's just going to knock you down a lot of pegs in terms of, players at that position. I think there was a lot of players in this draft in particular that just elevated over him because of that. I think he needed that extra year to work on that. And that's a benefit for Syracuse because you're getting a great player who, while he's working on his game, makes Syracuse a better team.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I especially agree with Donna there when she's talking about the forwards being maybe the guys who are going to shoot it the most and shoot it the best from 3-point range. Chris Bell, Benny, and Justin Taylor. 2 stats, though, that I love. That it's not like the backcourt can't shoot. Judah last year in ACC play, 20 ACC games, he made 33% of his threes. Now, 33% isn't awesome, but it's not horrible either.
It's not horrible, and he was better at the end of the season.
Mm-hmm.
Right, absolutely. And J.J. Starling was the reverse of that. J.J. got off to a decent start. His first 17 games at Notre Dame, he made 35% of his threes. And then he had the shoulder thing. Remember when he played at Syracuse at the Dome and he had that tape on his shoulder? That was the first time we had really seen it. From that game on, for the last 11 games, his shooting just plummeted. And I think it was because of the shoulder, and then late in the year he had the knee. Yeah. I think JJ can shoot. I mean, we all three saw him play at Baldwinsville High School.
I saw him play with the City Rocks.
He didn't forget how to shoot. The kid can shoot. I think he's the 35% shooter or even better from 3 next year if he's healthy. So I think Syracuse going to be okay.
And the thing I'm excited about with these lineups and this team is Adrian Autry said it from the jump here. They're going to push it. And I think we're going to see some 3-guard lineups. We're going to see some exciting play. And Judah's so great in the mid-range game that let's just say you're just not having a good night shooting the 3, which it's just going to happen inevitably, right? You can adjust. And that's what I like about this roster as we now know it, as Donna did a great job analyzing in her story that's up on syracuse.com. Like, okay, now we know what we got here in terms of this team. So while 3-point shooting, we know how important it is. I like how many options this team has. Like, okay, that's not working. Go to plan B. All right, that's screwed up. Go to plan C. Like, I think this team gives you choices with Judah coming back.
Yeah, when you think about the permutations that Adrian Autry can have here with roster stuff. I mean, we talk about 3-guard lineups with JJ, Judah, and Chance Westry. You talk about a bigger lineup, shooters with Chris Bell and Justin Taylor. What if you move Justin Taylor to the 2 for a few minutes? You're huge now in the backcourt. Naheem McLeod at center at 7'4" is massive. And you can back him up with a true center like Munir Hima if you want, but you could also go with Malik Brown. And now you have this athletic backcourt, and maybe you're playing man-to-man. I'm intrigued. I got to tell you.
I really like Malik Brown in the middle option. I mean, because he's so nimble, he moves really well. He gets up and down the court really well. The problem he had last year was he was just too small. He was just getting bounced around underneath there. And like I said, like, a lot of teams are going with smaller lineups, and I think he can hold his own in the middle. He's a very smart player. He's great around the rim. You know, he's going to have to diversify his offensive skill set to be able to do something other than dunking or scoring underneath the basket. And I think he's capable of doing that. And I think they're going to play a little bit differently this year. So it's not going to matter so much that he's only going to be an inside guy. But, you know, I really like him as a small ball 5-man. And I think that lineup is going to be used this year.
I love the option of having Naheem McLeod. And I like Malik at the 5 too. I think it's intriguing. I love just having in your arsenal the ability to send in a 7'4", 255-pound guy when you go up against Armando Bacot.
That's right.
Or DJ Burns from NC State, and just putting Naheem between these guys in the basket, saying, you know what? If you can shoot over that guy,
right?
Salute, right?
Well,
right.
And Donna, I'm going to steal this point right from you. Look at Miami last year. Miami had this great run, and they didn't exactly overwhelm you with size. They did it with speed. They did it with lineups. They did it with creativity.
That is 6'7" center.
It is exactly. So I think, well, now it's not an apples to apples comparison, but if you can get Malik Brown going in that smaller lineup where you're pushing it, and you have guards filling out their potential the way they are, and they stay healthy, like this could be a really fun team to watch.
Yeah, I think fun is the word, right? I mean, you know, we're all in the honeymoon. We all love Adrian, and we hope he does well. And we're all in the phase of let's see, you know, let's see what happens. There's so many possibilities. It's so intriguing. It's all new, and everything all new is always really, really interesting and really, really fun. But I do think just the composition of this team is going to make them a little bit more fun. I think they're going to be a little less half court oriented. Again, granted, you know, teams are not going to let you just randomly run on them. You're going to have to do some things to get your running game going. But I really feel like it's going to be a different pace, a different style of play, and especially, you know, they're going to play man defense, and it's going to look completely different. And I, for one, am all for it. Let's go. Let's see what it looks like. I'm ready. Let's go. Let's have a game. Let's play a game.
Can we have a little bit of a summer first? Just a little.
Yes, I would love to have a summer. Thank you.
It is funny, though. You wake up, it's June 1st as we talk here, and Syracuse fans are saying the same thing on Twitter and everywhere else. Like, let's go. Like, is it November yet? Let's rock and roll. And that it speaks to, like you said, Donna, it's honeymoon period. Everybody's intrigued. But look, now that we know what's happening here and what this roster is, like Adrian Autry went to work and, you know, put a roster together with transfers, getting Judah to come back. They did lose Jesse Edwards, which hurts. You weren't going to get everybody back, as we know. And Joe Girard, of course, transferred out as well, which we expected. That was, you know, not, you know, a surprise by any stretch of the imagination. But if we're like slapping a grade on what Adrian Autry has done to, in the era of the transfer portal, NIL, and just everything that he had to deal with coming in, like jumping into a rapid river from day one, I think he's done a pretty good job considering.
Well, let me ask you guys this. Where would Syracuse have finished? And if you want to say like ACC finish, or if you want to say like, I think they would have made the tournament and lost first round, or they would have missed the tournament. All right. So with Judah versus without Judah, where would you have where do you think you would have had Syracuse without him, and now with him? How much of a real impact are we talking?
You guys know how awful I am at this. I am the worst. Like, don't ask me anything of any kind of future predictions. I'm terrible at it. I mean, clearly they're better with him than they are without him. But they still have a lot of things that they have to be able to do this year. I mean, again, I run that story today. They need to play much better defense, and they need to be able to rebound. Those are the two major problems that they had last year. And can they address those two areas and just be better? You don't have to be great at either of those areas, but you just have to be better. And so until we figure out what's going to happen in those two areas, defense and rebounding, I think offensively they're going to be good. They're going to be fun to watch, and they're going to be fine. But could they do those other two things?
I think without you,
she dodged. Brent, can you give me a prediction?
Here we go. Right, it feels like a political debate. I'm just going to come in and drop the hammer. Without Judah Mintz, they don't make the tournament. I think there's just way too much that had to progress through the year. and acclimate. There's already an acclimation and a transition happening as it is. You brought up a good point earlier about the schedule early on. And look, the ACC is maybe not the bear it used to be in like recent years, and other leagues have surpassed it, but it's still a tough league, right? With Judah Mintz, I think you have a guy that's going to take over a few of those tough games, that's going to give you over the hump. And Donna, I think you made the point. They just have to be better. They don't have to be great. They just have to make that natural progression. There's still a lot of things that have to happen here. Don't get me wrong. But I think with Judah Mintz back, so you're 17-15 last year. What do you need to make the tournament this year? 3 or 4 more wins and you're in the conversation. I think he makes that kind of difference. So here on June 1st, I'm going to say it, guys. They're making the tournament. They're going to do it. And look, Autry's in a honeymoon here, but we all know patience is shorter these days and what the college basketball structure is. If they don't make the tournament this year, Professor Waters, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think I'm right on this. This would be the first time since the mid-1960s that they would miss the tournament 3 years in a row. Like you can't have that in college basketball today. So that'd be huge if they did it. And I'm going to say it. Judah Mintz is back. They make the tournament. Mark the tape.
Yeah, I think they make the tournament too, because again, I go back to that early season schedule. I think that early season schedule would have been a little bit too big of a hill to climb if your backcourt were 2 transfers and they both were freshmen last year and they're both coming off injuries and everyone's figuring each other out. And without Judah, you're asking some guys to make a real significant leap in order to be as good as you need to be. With Judah coming back, you're just asking guys to get a little better. Everyone else just get a little better. Whether it's Naheem McLeod or Chris Bell or Benny Williams or Justin Taylor or whoever it is, just get a little better. And you're going to be fine. I tell you what, too. We haven't talked about Chance Westry enough. I know he was hurt so much that he didn't play hardly at all at Auburn last year.
Right.
But, boy, I remember that kid in high school. Syracuse was after him when he was like a freshman down in Harrisburg.
That's right.
Man, if he's healthy, he could be a very interesting weapon, whether he starts or comes off the bench. He's part of that 3-guard look. I'm very interested in seeing where Chance Westry's at.
The thing that I was really intrigued with Chance was everybody that I talked to about him said he's a much better passer than anybody will ever imagine. And if you look at tape of him, he is such a great passer. He's got really good basketball IQ. He sees the floor really well, and he's big. He's 6'6". He rebounds a little bit too out of the guard spot, which is important, as me, the rebound obsessive, is. And you know, I do think that he can score. He can get to the basket. He can score at the rim. I think he's really, really interesting guy because of his size and because of his basketball IQ and because of the way he can make plays. I think he fits perfectly in the way that Syracuse wants to play.
Yeah, I'm right there. So here we are, June 1st.
Oh, I know.
You know, I think the portal is closed now. The roster's full. The NBA draft is over. And now Adrian Autry and his staff probably get a little bit of time here before they hit the road in July, and they'll start looking ahead. They've already got 2 commitments in the 2024 recruiting class. Donnie Freeman out of D.C., Elijah Moore out of New York City. This has been – one of y'all mentioned the honeymoon period for Red Autry. Brent, it might have been you.
Mm-hmm.
I think the honeymoon ends now, right? And now, because basically everything's turned out really well on this honeymoon.
Well, you know what? I'm gonna say something conversely to that. I think he needs a year or 2 to try to get his footing and try to figure out how to run a team and try to figure out how these roster permutations are going to work and all this. Like, if Syracuse doesn't make the tournament this year, I'm not going to be like, oh, fire the guy, let's go. I mean, it takes a while. It's a brand new system. There's a lot of brand new guys on this team this year. And we're talking about losing Jesse Edwards, who was extremely impactful last season. He was the best rebounder on the team by far. And, you know, and a really good defender in the middle of the zone. So I think it's going to be much harder than we might anticipate it off our high of Judah's coming back and we've got the band back together in terms of Syracuse's team. Yeah. And so I'm honestly, I feel like he needs a year or two, maybe even, just to figure out how it works, how everything goes.
Yeah, I didn't mean to suggest that, like, oh, all of a sudden now everyone gets to be critical or something. I'm just, in terms of like the honeymoon period, I think it's like when you return from a honeymoon, like whether you went away for a week or two, well, now you're back home, and now here you are, and the guys are going to be coming back in July. All the players, they'll be here. You'll start your workouts. Now just really starts the day to day. It seems like all the coaches have just been like hamsters on a wheel,
right,
going crazy ever since the season ended. I think now they're going to get a chance to maybe kind of settle into the day-to-day stuff. He's going to now have time to put in his system. They'll work with these guys beginning in July. They'll have all summer with them.
I'm not trying to put any undue pressure on them, but here's where I'm going to kind of meet this. I'm going to meet this in the middle here. Autry's been there. They know him, and it's been a real credit to him that, what did we hear Chance Westry say, JJ Starling say, Judah Mintz in his video last night? Relationships, right? The relationships that Autry and this staff had with these players to either bring them back in Judah's case or to come to Syracuse in Chance and JJ and, some of these transfers that liked the prior relationships they had. So I feel like they have sort of a head start to do this. It'd be a different feeling if this was a whole new thing coming in. So Autry definitely needs time to put his own style in play. Yeah, he's been there, but it's a lot different. And when
it's a lot different. It's a lot different from suggesting like maybe we should take Judah out to taking Judah out. I mean, it's a lot different from sitting on the bench and speculating about what you would do and then having to be in the pressure situation and making a determination. And that's really hard. And I don't at all diminish the difficulty of moving one seat over on a college basketball bench.
But it does speak to the importance of Judah to this team. Like, if Autry had to do all this without a known commodity, somebody that he can look at that bench at and know what he's getting, as opposed to I'm trying to figure out what I'm getting. Like, I think that's where that excitement comes from, where that stabilization comes from, and that feeling comes from out there about having a player, not just of Judah's talent back. I mean, I'm just excited to see what he can do as a player next year. As the kids like to say, guys, he's got that dog in him, like I just love watching him play. He attacks that basket like his next meal depends on it. And I just love watching that. And you need that attitude, that leadership, and just a known thing on this roster. So that's where I feel like, okay, game on here. Whereas opposed to if he didn't come back, it's like, okay, we really got to turn up the patience machine as Adrian Autry puts his own mark on this program.
Yep. And when you talk about Judah, it'll be real interesting. Look at the success rate of Syracuse point guards in their sophomore years, whether they started as freshmen or whether they didn't. Sherman Douglas, Jason Hart, Johnny Flynn, Michael Carter-Williams. That sophomore year is when guys really start to kick in. Whether, like I said, whether they started, and really, Johnny Flynn was great as a freshman. Jason Hart was pretty good as a freshman, started every game. But, man, their sophomore years, those guys got better. Michael Carter-Williams stepped into that starting role as a sophomore. We'll see if we have that kind of a season from Judah Mintz. And if they do, Brent's going to be right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Donna gets exasperated by us, doesn't she?
No, I don't. I do not. I have a cold. I'm just a little on the cranky level right now, just to begin with.
I love it.
Well, I think that's a good spot to wrap it up. This has been a great discussion. I always love talking to my colleagues about Syracuse basketball and whatever's going on. And of course, this is a big one today on the heels of Judah Mintz's decision to return to Syracuse for his sophomore year. Brent, Donna, thanks for joining us here. Donna, go get some hot tea or something. Take care of yourself. You did great. You powered through. You were awesome.
It wasn't that hard, honestly.
Until next time on the podcast, everybody, we'll see you.
Bye.